Welcome. If you seek truth, the truth shall set you free. Fear not. And now the agenda with Crystal Rosati.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Agenda with Crystal Rosati. I'm the host, Crystal, and I want to welcome you to this episode. We're going to be talking about the Trump assassination. I want to start off by telling you it's been a while since we taped an episode, and part of the reason why is because there were so many things going on so fast. I didn't know when to pull the plug and say, done, let's tape something. So also, I don't want to jump to conclusions and rush like the mainstream media does to report things that aren't actually factual. Silly me. So I also wanted to wait and kind of see what was coming out about it after the fact and as time went by in order to give you the most current information we could. Again, everything's dropping. It seems like daily and even hourly. So new news is going to come out after this. At this point, this is the information that I've done the research on and gathered. I think you're going to find it interesting because a lot of the stuff I'm going to bring to you is not stuff that mainstream media is talking about. It's stuff you may or may not have heard about. So stay with me so we can go through this timeline that I'm going to give you and talk about the different things that have come up in the news since then and even before then about this assassination attempt on our former president that we love so much. So
sitting president. He's sitting president.
Yeah. I have Josh here as the producer of the show. I'm so grateful, Josh, you're here with me. Turn the camera around. Let them see you.
We're not fake news here.
That's right. We're not fake news. We bring the receipts, and I'm going to be kind of talking with Josh about this stuff just for more fun because, I've been doing these videos by myself and it gets a little lonely sometimes, and I like to have that camaraderie with the team and with this producer that I can't call him the perfect producer because that's Sterling, but what did Rich call you?
The perfect replacement.
The perfect replacement producer.
Just like Keanu Reeves.
That's amazing. So welcome, Josh. Thank you for everything you do for us. It's amazing at Revolver. So thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, so let's get started. I want to talk, first of all, we're going to put the whole timeline up so you can see it. If you're on audio, you really should go back and watch the video because I got this timeline built, interesting things we're going to talk through. You can grab a screenshot of it, whatever you need to do, but worked really hard on putting this together, so anxious to get started. We're going to start with prior to 2024. So Thomas Crooks, if you haven't heard, is the one that was the assassin that was trying to take out Trump. He's 20 years old. That in and of itself is kind of shocking that he was able to do what he did. But I want to give you some background on it and on him and his family and kind of who he was. You may have already heard this again, but stick with me because there's going to be things in this that you haven't heard of. So I guarantee it. Both his parents were social workers. Now, that in and of itself, if you think about somebody who's doing an assassination attempt, you would think they would be a little mentally off, right? And to have two parents who are social workers seems a little weird. Did they intervene with him? Did they counsel him? What was going on there in his home life? I don't know. They were both licensed social workers. He was in a BlackRock commercial in 2023. We're going to play that commercial for you real quick in case you haven't seen it. So let's roll that.
My name is Brian DeLallo. I teach AP and Honors Economics.
Actually, there he is. I just want to make sure that everybody can see that that's the student there.
Yeah.
Looking up at the teacher.
Right under his hand.
In Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Financial well-being to me is knowing that I can be free to do the things that I love to do. I hope when I retire someday, they say, that guy made this place a special place to come to.
Once more there.
Yep. There he is again.
School and gave as much as he could to help the community.
Yeah, so if you watched our episode on the global economy, you would have known about BlackRock. But we're going to talk a little bit more about BlackRock in a minute. BlackRock is not a good player. I'm just going to say that. And I guess they decided to do a commercial in his town in particular. And so he was selected to be in that commercial because he was incredibly smart. He was an AP student. He graduated with honors, incredibly bright student. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, given what we know about BlackRock, that's a really weird connection there.
Very weird. Love it. Yeah, it's Twilight Zone stuff. Definitely. I want to talk to you also about his mental health. I want to go back to that for a minute because we also talked about the mental health circumstances and culture and environment that we have now, the push for mental health, as they call it, in everything. But we also, in prior episodes, tied that back to the communist goals, the United Nations, and the global agenda. So if you haven't watched the episodes before this, please go back and watch them because you're going to start to see through watching these episodes that I'm bringing you a definite picture that's being painted of what the intentions are and why we're in this culture war. So definitely go back and check those out. It's not necessarily that they want to ensure true healthy mental states for people. I'm just going to say that. BlackRock is aligned with the UN and Agenda 2030, and they embrace ESG scores. We, again, talked about that in the global economy episode. Just know that for now. And then another thing was that he tried out for the rifle team at his school when he was in high school, and he didn't make it. And the rifle team instructor actually came out and was interviewed and talked about how he couldn't even shoot straight within his lane when he tried out. He shot across like 6 lanes. So he was a terrible shot. So how do you go from that in high school to, 2 years after graduating high school, basically like a sniper sharpshooter? How does that happen? Ask yourself. It's interesting.
He did go to the club that was not too far from his home on a regular basis, and would shoot there. And not that would hone his skills all that much, but he did go to that club, and also he was less than 400 feet away from
Yards.
400 yards. Yeah, 400 yards.
Yeah.
He was 400, less than 400 feet. It was about 100 yards.
Yeah.
It was
Okay.
not that far away. I mean, he was very, very close. So with an AR-15, that's a very accurate weapon on its own. He just has to set up the tripod and go. I mean, it really will take care of itself.
I don't know.
And the wind conditions were, not all that heavy until just after the shot.
Yeah.
As you can see in the picture behind you.
Yeah. I just think it's intriguing that he was able to pull that off. And going from somebody who, in rifle club shot across 6 lanes and couldn't even shoot straight in his own lane. I get practice and stuff like that. I wonder how much he did practice because that's a long way to travel. I go to the range a lot. I do, handgun shooting. I don't do long gun shooting, but I have a really hard time thinking that I could go and do that even with a pistol. And I have a lot more history of doing it because I was shooting when I was a kid with my dad. So I don't know. That seems like a stretch. But because he was so smart, maybe that's why. He went to it from an engineering kind of perspective. Who knows? Just something to think about. And then the next thing was he registered as a Republican in the last election. I want to put this on the screen. This is from Reddit, their thread for Dumb Hoosiers, which is Indiana Hoosiers. This was in our last primary, and I kept seeing posts like this throughout that time period. They're calling for people as Democrats to go vote in the Republican primary. In Indiana, you have to declare at the time you go to vote, you have to declare a party. They don't do any historical check. So when you go to vote, you can ask for a Democratic ballot or a Republican ballot, either one. And they were encouraging people that were Democrats to go pick up a Republican ballot so that they could vote for people that they knew the Republicans wouldn't support in the end. to influence the election on the Republican side. So that's proof right there. I mean, he only voted in as a Republican in the last primary, in the last election. So that's proof right there of what it could have been. And that's not the only time. The last primary was not the only time Democrats called for this. I remember them calling for it when Trump ran the last time because they were trying to get us a different Republican candidate. So crooked, it's cheating, but that's, you know.
He almost certainly did do it registered as a Republican as a Democrat, but really as a Democrat because he donated to Act Blue $100.
Yep.
That's
and there's whole
record.
Stories about Act Blue in there, Josh.
Yes, there is. That's a whole other episode there.
Yep. So yeah, that doesn't mean anything that he was a registered Republican. Don't let them confuse you there. It literally means nothing. And then another thing was he was known as a loner and bullied in school. I kept hearing that a lot. His high school counselor was interviewed, and he said, so this is interesting. He said that Crooks was alone at times, but he wasn't necessarily what he would consider to be a loner. He had friends. He was bullied, but he did have friends. And the counselor said he never saw anything that Crooks did that would have implied that he was going to do anything like this. He was an AP honors student. He graduated with honors. He never caused any trouble. There was nothing questionable in his behavior, anything like that. Ironically, his classmates were also interviewed, and you can find these on whatever channels you like, YouTube, Rumble, whatever. But his classmates were interviewed as well. And they gave different stories. So some people said that he was definitely a loner. Other people said he had friends. Other people said he was different. He was weird. So they all gave different kinds of accounts of how he behaved. But ultimately, there were no complaints against him. He was never in trouble in school, anything like that. So his school counselor insisted that in the 2 years after he graduated, something significant had to have occurred to send him down this path. He obviously didn't know what, but he definitely insisted that something must have happened in those 2 years since he graduated for him to do this, because he wouldn't have done it otherwise. I want to go back to the BlackRock connection. We're going to talk a little bit later about something called Austin Private Wealth. And at this point, I just want to make the connection that BlackRock and Vanguard, and we talked about both of those, and State Street on the global economy episode, but BlackRock and Vanguard are both the biggest contributors to BlackRock. So keep that in mind as we move forward too, and I'll bring it up in a little bit also. In April, moving on in the timeline, we're going to go to April. Representative Benny Thompson submitted a bill to remove Secret Service detail from President Trump. That's an interesting piece to me, because why would he do that? As we build this story and this timeline, I want you to be thinking about the puzzle pieces that are being put together. Again, oftentimes what people call conspiracy theories turn out to be conspiracy facts. You just have to give it time to play out and the investigations to take place and all that. And in the end, it comes out. Truth always does. But I found it so interesting that just in April of this year, they wanted to remove a Secret Service detail. So why is that? Why do you think that is? Did you think because he was convicted in May of the 34 counts of felonies? Did you think the April event of trying to pull his Secret Service was in anticipation of that conviction? And how did they know that that was going to happen exactly? I think this guy knew they would convict. Now he's come out and said, well, it would apply to Hunter Biden if Hunter Biden were convicted too. So it's not partisan by any means. But I kind of think that's gaslighting. What do you guys think? Put a comment down below. Let me know.
That sounds like Hunter Biden was the patsy to prove their very loose point.
Right.
Both cases were out of the statute of limitations. So.
Yep. you never know, do you? With politicians, it's crazy. So then we go to May when President Trump was convicted of those felonies. The sentencing was supposed to occur in July, right before the Republican convention, but it got pushed out, of course. So imagine what this timeline might have looked like if he had been sentenced prior to the convention. What would have changed? If he had been taken out right before the convention, that would have caused chaos in the Republican Party. Do you not think the Democrats were hunting for that? They were foaming at the mouth for that to happen? Do you not think so? Because Trump is leading in every poll pretty much, and has been. And then you've got incoherent Biden tripping all over himself, falling upstairs, can't speak well. Sometimes I think it's contagious because, I catch that sometimes myself. But I don't have a teleprompter either. I'm just saying. And I'm not a professional in the government and haven't been for 50 years like he has. So, there's that. Anyways, he couldn't get ahead. So to me, as I built this timeline, the pieces were falling together. The timeline was building it. And I think you're going to see that too as we go. The delay in sentencing, do you think it had anything to do with this plan for assassination? So the sentencing was supposed to happen, then the convention, right, where he was going to be nominated to be the candidate for the Republican Party. That was a given up to that point. All everybody was waiting on was who was his VP pick going to be. But then the sentencing got delayed. So now what? They have nothing to go off of to dissuade people before the convention, right? It got delayed. So I kind of see that as another motive for somebody to have some nefarious intentions with this. Then in June and July, that's when we find Crooks preparing for the attempt on Trump's life. What was he doing? The Heritage Foundation's oversight project uncovered GPS travel records. And let me explain how they did that. They took the GPS records and they looked at devices that were found at his home and work repeatedly. Obviously, there's an IP address attached to that, right? So they found a data set of a device that went repeatedly from his home to his work and back home and back to work and back to home. Nobody else besides him would have done that. Logically, just him. But they haven't been able to tie it to him because he seemed to have a second phone. Why would he do that? Also, based on that GPS info, if you want to put that map up, Josh, do you not find it interesting that that device was found in D.C. near the Secret Service headquarters in June of 2023? That same device.
Another strange connection.
Mm-hmm. Things that make you go, Right? So they can't say it was him, but I'm pretty sure the evidence points to him with this. And there's also another report that he also was in Boston area. That device was, let me clarify that. That device that we think was his was in the Boston area too, which is also near government agencies, right?
Yeah, the phone that took them forever to actually unlock because they said it was so super secure that neither Secret Service or FBI could get into it. Right.
So, there's that also. It just seems so ironic, doesn't it? All of these pieces that are fitting together. Something else that was interesting was a week before the attempt, Iran issued a threat. The New York Post, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal. So I'm not pulling conservative sources. I told you I was going to bring the receipts. Those three and more reported that Iran is trying to keep President Trump from winning by interfering in the election. You can Google it. There's articles out there already from those sources and more. So think about it. Why would that be? Trump had an agreement with Iran under his administration that kept them from advancing their weaponry, kept them at bay. And Biden, when he took office, almost immediately canceled that agreement, allowing Iran to build up their military. Okay? Based on history, Trump, if he wins, was going to go back and reinstate that agreement and try to keep Iran from building up their weaponry and their military. They know that. They don't want that. So they issued a threat and tried to interfere in Trump's election. 3.5 years they've had to build up their military. They know Trump will destroy it again, and they do not want him to win. Okay, so now we move to the day of, or the day before, the assassination attempt. Crooks bought a ladder at Home Depot. Now, could he have just bought a ladder at Home Depot? Yeah, he could have just bought a ladder at Home Depot. Just like it could just be ironic that Iran issued a threat a week before. It could be so ironic that, this device was found near the Secret Service and, by the way, the FBI headquarters in D.C. These could all just be irony.
Do we want to watch the video on Iran issuing the threat?
Oh, yeah. Let's throw that up. Let's go back to that.
Let me just ask, in the short time I have left, what is the nature of the Iran threat?
I'm sorry, Senator.
This
can
is
you
the
repeat
new
question?
head of the
What
Secret
is
Service,
the
by the way.
nature of the Iran threat, the threat to former President Trump that has been mentioned?
Well, we know that let me be clear here, the terrorist regime of Iran have been targeting people, our country, for many, many years now. We've talked about that here before. I want to be clear about that. From the FBI standpoint, we know publicly they've targeted former President Trump. They've called for his assassination along with other current and former government officials. That's public information. It's well known to everyone.
A specific or imminent threat on July 13th?
We have no information that there are any co-conspirators or that foreign or domestic, including Iran, related to this. But we're not, I want to be clear, we have no evidence of that. We're not ruling anything out. We're looking into all possibilities and leaving our minds open to that.
Was that on the minds of the Secret Service on July 13th, that there might be some threat from Iran?
Sir, we, as Deputy Director Abate just said, we're aware of the public sentiment and statements of the government of Iran to do harm to Donald J. Trump, and we use a threat-based model.
So there you have it. I mean, they're talking about it at the Secret Service. They were aware of it. It's been publicly announced, targeting Trump specifically. So why was their detail so light that day? I don't know.
It's a good question. Also, I want to say kudos to Senator Blumenthal, and you don't hear me say that
Right.
often.
Yes.
So
Turn the camera around, Josh.
So good at asking the questions. I'll reserve it for the long things, but so good at asking those questions. So I just wanted to add that real quick.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point because Blumenthal is a Democrat. So thank you for taking that issue on and spearheading it and calling it out. We really do appreciate it. And we want to say good when there's a point to it, when there is a reason for calling out the good. We don't just think every Democrat's bad and every Democrat has a nefarious intent all the time. That's not the point. Your Democrat leadership, you should question, just like the Republican leadership should be questioned. But again, I don't know. We didn't do an assassination attempt or have any desire to do that. We have a viable candidate. So there's no reason to do that. Anyways, did I say that out loud? Hate that. Back to the ladder. So the day before the assassination attempt, Crooks bought a ladder at Home Depot. Like I said, could he have just bought a ladder? Sure he could. Sure he could. It's just ironic. But it brings me to question, did he already have a plan in place the day before? Because the reports we keep hearing about were that he went early that day, the day of. But that seems to imply to me that he had something planned even before that. He supposedly was looking the day of for a place to hang his hat, so to speak. But he already bought the ladder the day before. Now, he didn't end up using the ladder. From what I understand, he used an air conditioning unit that he climbed up on. So maybe he figured out that, a bicycle wasn't a good mode of transportation to carry a ladder and a backpack with an AR-15 in it. I'm just saying. It could be. I just, again, wanted to say that was kind of interesting to me. The Secret Service has been exposed at this point. They didn't have the staffing that they needed that day. In fact, they were understaffed, and some of the agents that were there were actually investigators with desk jobs that they pulled into the field that were not field agents. Probably the lady that looks like Melissa McCarthy that's trying to struggle to put her gun back in her holster might have been one of those investigators that had a desk job. I don't know.
Looks like it's Pat.
I know, right? It was like watching a Melissa McCarthy movie. And I like her, just saying. But anyways, they weren't field agents. They were deficient. It was also said that they purposefully staffed more women at that event because their overall number one goal, not just at this event, but as Secret Service, as soon as Kimberly Cheadle took the position of director, was DEI. And at this particular event, they chose a lot of women to go because they wanted to make a show of it. So, there's that. Think about that iconic picture behind me where his head and shoulders and torso, upper torso is exposed. Why? Because the woman is too short. She can't cover him. And who does that? Who puts somebody like that in a place of protecting an iconic person like this when you're not able to protect? She needs a stepladder to even cover him. It makes no sense.
There's another photo of them all gathering around him, and then one of the women who completely missed him, and she's ducking. Mm-hmm. And they show two arrows in the distance between the men and her, and then someone wrote in there, wage gap.
Oh, that's kind of funny, actually. There might be some merit to that. I don't know. I'm just saying. So the Secret Service, though, they had an excuse that they partnered with local police. And the local police were supposed to be responsible for the outer perimeter, which is outside the fence, which is where the building was that the shooter was on. Now, a couple of things about that. First of all, the local police testified in interviews and stuff that the Secret Service didn't even show up to the briefing that morning with them. In addition to that, Secret Service shut off the comms. They weren't on the same comms as the police, so they couldn't communicate with them. You think that was intentional? I'm thinking at every other event, they make sure those things happen. If they're going to cooperate with other law enforcement agencies, they make sure all that's covered. But not that day? Secret Service has been trying to blame local police. Local police are coming out and exposing, and they have the receipts, by the way. Local police are showing the receipts against Secret Service. And so here's my point about all of this. So we got a reduced force, reduced staff, a perimeter that isn't accurately covering the line of sight towards the president. Another thing they said, which is so dumb to me, and I don't understand it, was that when the Secret Service picks their places to be, they look at it from the protectee out to that direction. Meaning they would have been looking at Trump saying, can something get to this point from Trump? Which makes no sense. It should be the other way around. Can that location get to Trump? But they testified, Kimberly Cheadle testified it's the opposite that they do as their procedures. That is so dumb and doesn't make any kind of sense. I'm telling you. And then I just think all this is way too convenient. It's way too convenient. All right. So the next thing is Crooks posted on a gaming site the day before, and his exact quote was, July 13th will be my premiere. Watch it as it unfolds. Now, you're going to find stories where people are saying that wasn't him that posted that, but from the research I've done, it has been confirmed subsequently that it was him posting that. Not worth going into a bunch of detail on that. Just wanted to mention it. Next, we're going to talk about the Trump media massive stock dump by Austin Private Wealth. And this, to me, is the biggest item on this timeline. We have a little article about this that I want to read some of. So let me get to it myself. So I'm going to look around the camera. The title of it is Investment Firm Says Massive Short of Truth Social Stock Before Trump Shooting Was Filed in Error. And I'm going to summarize what happened. So there's a type of investment activity you can do where you can say, we think this particular stock is going to tank. And so we're going to buy basically bets against that stock. And what happens is if the stock does end up tanking, they make a ton of money. Ton of money, I'm telling you. Well, this Austin investment firm did that. And now they're saying it was a clerical error. They bought bets that Trump Social would tank. And it's basically like short selling stocks. But anyways, it didn't because he wasn't killed. But think about if he was killed, it would have tanked. They would have made a huge amount of money. And they did this just the day before. Now, here's the interesting thing. Austin Private Wealth, their biggest investors are who? BlackRock and Vanguard. The UN globalist tied funding agencies that promote ESG and the globalist agenda and Agenda 2030 and all the fun things like that. That's their biggest investors. Trump is against all of that. So, again, that's just something to make you go, But to me, that was a big deal because I can't imagine an accidental issue like that occurring, actually.
And I would have been affected because I have some of the True Social DJT stock.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, to me, that's a big, what's the word I want, Josh? That's a big indicator to me that there's something nefarious going on behind the scenes with this.
Yeah, Gen Z would call it a red flag.
Yes. Yep. And again, that didn't make mainstream media until the Austin group came out and said, oh, sorry, it was a clerical error. We didn't mean to do that. Are you buying that? Because I'm not buying that. I'm not buying it at all. Now we're going to go to the actual day of the event. And this is a sad, sad day, folks. Sad, sad day for everyone, not just the right, but the left also. So that day, Crooks called off of work. He said he would be back the next day on Sunday, which I find interesting too. He thought he was going to be working the next day, or he just wanted everybody to think he was. I don't know. He went to that site early in Bethel, Pennsylvania. Supposedly he rode a bike there. He wore a backpack. I've heard people say there's no way he could have carried the gun on the bicycle into the location, that he would have had to have assembled it. But I haven't heard anybody talk about seeing him assemble anything. So I don't know about that. I'm still trying to figure it out because, you know, you would think that if he was assembling it, even if it was well before, like hours before the event, somebody would have seen it or something. I'm just saying. And then he had a drone and he flew it all around the location to scope it out. And nobody thought that was an issue. And I don't know what height he was flying it at, but with drones, it's my understanding you have to have clearance.
Yeah, they'll automatically they'll automatically, because they operate on a certain hertz
frequency. Yeah,
and because of that, if a local airport, if it shows up on a local airport's radar, they'll shut it off immediately. Or they'll both shut it down and contact the user. This is too close to the airport.
Right.
Too close to this. Too close to that.
But I thought there was a certain height it had to reach before that happened. Is that not right? I thought.
No, if you cannot leave the ground.
Ah.
Yep.
Okay, well, there you have it, folks.
I have friends who fly drones
all the
time.
So they're right there. Why was he allowed to do that? And nobody thought that was an issue, and nobody called anybody or checked on it or anything. That's just so weird. Again, the ladder that he bought was too big for the bike. That's probably why he didn't bring it. And that's why he was scoping around the building, trying to find a way up to the roof, and eventually climbed up through the air conditioning unit. I still go back to, with all of these conditions being in place, how did he know to pick this particular event? Because I haven't heard anything about the other rallies where these circumstances were in place, like the lack of staff, the shortened perimeter that wasn't sufficient, the investigators serving as field agents. I haven't heard any other event or rally where those were the case. Have you, Josh?
No, all too perfect of a storm.
It is. And so you got a 20-year-old who just happens to know this is the day. I don't get it. I don't think so. I just want to, for people to go out there and research this as well. A little program called MK Ultra. It was declassified some years ago. Just I'm want to encourage anybody to go out and check out that project and read about MK Ultra. Absolutely. That is a good possibility for sure, because again, like his counselor said, there was no reason to think he was ever going to do something like this. Something happened in the 2 years after high school.
Yeah, well, and the government said that they discontinued it.
Yeah.
It's like, of course they discontinued under that name.
Yeah, so here's another thing. He was labeled as a suspicious person for about 3 hours before the event, and very seriously for an hour before the event. They knew about him because the crowds that were there, and you can find tons of videos that people took on their cell phones that were actually there, were pointing him out to law enforcement. Again, there were only local police outside the fence, outside the perimeter, and that's where these people were, and that's where he was. So they were trying to get local police's attention to tell them about it. There is a series, well, it's actually one episode, but there's a special by TMZ that I recommend you go and watch on the assassination that just came out. It seems like a very fair and balanced episode. I watched it last night, and there are Secret Service agents that are given, their side of it and talking about all of this, and they're just blowing it out of the water, saying this should have never happened. The perimeter wasn't sufficient. The fact they didn't show up to the briefing that morning with the local police was insufficient, and on and on and on. But about an hour before the event, there is a police officer, I'm going to call him Barney Fife, because he was aware of him on the roof, but then he lost him. How do you do that? I don't understand.
Well, it was too sloped, Andy.
What was it, 4-inch pitch? Too sloped. And if you don't know, the director of the Secret Service, Kimberly Cheadle, former director, did say that it was a safety issue for them to be on the roof because it was too sloped. It was 4 inches. So
It's almost flat.
yeah, exactly. And then snipers actually saw Thomas Crooks on the roof, but they didn't shoot him until he shot at Trump. Now, this is an interesting take that I was just talking to Josh about before we started taping this. Pennsylvania is a constitutional carry state. The position of some of the agents that were interviewed on the TMZ special spoke about this, and they said that because it's a constitutional carry state, you cannot go after somebody just because they have a gun. Doesn't matter what kind of gun it is, even say AR-15. You cannot prove in court if you should go after them before they actually do something wrong. You cannot go to court and say, we thought he might. They won't, they can't do that. So they had to wait until he took action before they could shoot him. Now, I don't know about you, but that defies common sense to me. Josh, help me out here. The guy was in plain clothes. He's climbing up an air conditioning unit to get on the roof, has a gun. Crowds of people around are trying to holler and tell the police, the local police, he's up there and he's got a gun. They actually have video from their phones yelling, he's got a gun, before he even shot. And you can't do anything because you can't.
Don't just stand around.
Sure he was going to do something wrong? I don't get it.
I don't get it. And furthermore, with those citizens, I mean, I just can't get my head wrapped around people just pointing.
Yes.
I know he had a gun, but gun or not, you know that the president, former president, I call him sitting president, Donald Trump is going to be on that stage, or is on that stage, or will be soon. And there's a guy with a gun. If he doesn't show me a badge, I'm hopping on him. If we have all of our Revolver Broadcasting crew there,
we'd all be. I'm a girl, and I'd be doing it too. I can tell you that right now.
He'd have been down flat, and we'd have held him for the police.
Yeah, I don't get that either. Especially there were so many, I'd like to say bigger men that had their cell phones taking video of this. Why did they not even group together? If you're afraid to go up there by yourself, group together. Like Flight 93, let's roll. That's how I think about it. I don't understand that either. They're just yelling at police, hey, there's a guy with a gun on the roof. Okay. And mind you, it would be different to me if that was a quick event. Like they saw him and then tried to get somebody's attention, and then he shot seconds later. It didn't go down like that.
No, it was several minutes.
Yeah. They had plenty of time. I don't know. The other thing is that the Secret Service, when they testified in the hearings, there seemed to be a real delineation between a suspicious person and a threat. And that's where that comes in. They considered him a suspicious person for at least 3 hours before the event, seriously for an hour before the event, but they couldn't make the leap to call him a threat until he actually shot. Again, makes no common sense to me. No common sense. If it is a situation because of policies, trust me, I have been in quality assurance dealing with the Code of Federal Regs for over 30 years. Okay, that's the federal law. If your company has a policy, it's not law. It can change. You can update those policies if they don't make sense. You have the ability to do that because you're a sovereign group, right? Policies are not law. They're your company's position on how you're going to implement the law. But they're not law. So change the freaking policies. I don't get it.
It's just that easy.
It really is. It really is. I get their position the way it stands now, though, because let's face it, our legal system and our court systems are jacked up nowadays. And when they said they couldn't go to court and say, we thought he was going to do something, so we killed him, they have a point there. The way things are nowadays, they do have a point. I'm going to have to say that to be fair. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with what they did, but I see their point. I'm just saying. So it's a sad state of affairs. Okay, and so then Cook's parents actually called the police earlier that day too to report him missing and, share their concern. I haven't read a bunch of detail on this, so I don't really know, but that doesn't make sense to me either. He's not in high school or middle school. He's not under their care. He's an adult. He's 20 years old, been out of high school 2 years, full-time employed as an administrator at a nursing home, which seems to also be somebody who would be caring, maybe. I don't understand why his parents did that, because the only time he would have been known to have been missing per se is because he called in sick to work that day. Now, the reports are that he did ask his dad if he could borrow the long gun, and his dad said yes, and he told him he was going to go practice with it. I don't know if that happened the day before or exactly when that conversation took place, but they would have known he had the gun, but still, he'd only been, quote, missing for a few hours at that point. He just didn't go to work. And I can tell you, with my adult kid, if they didn't go to work that day, I wouldn't think anything different about it. I'd be like, oh, maybe they weren't feeling well. But they clearly had some trigger, forgive the pun, to cause them to call the police and report him missing. So, again, something isn't adding up. They were social workers. They knew him. It's really sad that a social worker family had this happen with their own kid. It doesn't give me a lot of faith in it, unless something like what we said, MK Ultra was involved, or perhaps, that trip to DC, something happened the year before. So it's just odd to me that his parents called. So then we have President Trump, who was shot. And you see the picture behind me. We have another picture where you can see the trail of the bullet that's circled. You can see it flying through the air. That's an iconic picture, by the way, a photographer happened to catch. And now I got a little video that we're going to play. This is a 3D rendering of how that took place. So watch it real quick.
Take a look what happened.
For you listening on audio, it's a really cool little short video. I encourage you to go look it up, but it's a 3D rendering of his actual face while he's speaking in slow-mo, and then there's an image below it, and it shows the movement from like the top of his head looking down and the bullet grazing his ear, and how close that was and how it could have been so much more devastating. And of course we can't go without mentioning Corey comparator. I think I'm saying that right.
Yes.
That was such a sad situation. On that same TMZ video, I'm going to recommend it again. His wife, like I never saw videos of his wife and his kid, but I did on there. And the doctor who attended to him at the rally, as well as an EMT kind of guy, a medic in the military, who's also the head of the GOP for that county, also attended to him. And they speak about how devastating it was and the events that occurred. So shout out to Corey's family. I'm sorry for your loss. If you happen to see this, we all need to pray for them. But that takes us to what have we learned since then? Now we're going to get to some more interesting information. After the fact, we found out that, first of all, Biden, I have to say President Biden to be fair, did not issue any kind of statement for days. And I find that really despicable. Even Bush, when 9/11 happened, was immediately involved. Biden was in his basement somewhere. I don't know. I just think it was disrespectful. And that's just me. Crooks had no social media presence whatsoever. I find that very weird. It had to have been scrubbed. And I'm not sure he would have known how to do that himself, or maybe because he was a really smart guy, and technically advanced. But I just find that very interesting. If he had planned to go to work the next day, he wouldn't have done that, right, before this event. If he, there's just too many coinkydinks around that to me. And then I want to call your attention to the fact that, we had our potential candidate, our desired candidate, attacked with an assassination attempt. But did you see anybody go out and riot or burn buildings down or attack other people or vandalize things? Nope. That in itself should speak volumes to you. And to you on the left, I want you to take a good hard look at that, okay? Because we don't act that way. Just saying. Then they found a van with explosives, and Crooks had a remote detonator on him when he was killed. There's so many things about this van situation that also don't make sense to me. I believe it was there was a van found a block away or a mile away, I can't remember which one it was, that had explosives in it. However, even in that distance, I guess it's possible for a remote detonator to reach that far. I don't know. Can it? Depends on the frequency, right?
Yeah.
But I just think that's weird. Here's an interesting thing, too. That bill that we talked about that Representative Benny Thompson submitted to remove Trump's Secret Service, guess what? It got pulled back after this happened. Gee, I wonder why. I also wonder why there was a deafening silence in the media about that whole thing, because it didn't make mainstream. Another thing that I noticed, the media acted so sympathetic for less than 24 hours. But then they went right back to bashing Trump, and I'm talking about the mainstream media on the left, bashing Trump, bashing Republicans, bashing everybody, right? So that's another thing that happened. They haven't to this day found a motive for why this occurred, which also goes back to what we were talking about earlier. His counselor said something happened in the 2 years since he graduated. He didn't have any signs that he was going to do this, but clearly there was something going on, at least for a year before this happened. So I wonder, what that's about. All I heard from the media after that was we need to tamp things down. We need to be nicer to each other. We need to calm down. Have you heard that? Because even Biden has been saying that. And Kamala has been saying it as well. But here's the deal. I'm going to say this very clearly, and I want you to pay attention. You don't get to poke the bear continuously and then tell the bear to calm down or tamp things down. That's not how this works. Take that seriously, because you're going to poke the bear one too many times at some point, and you're going to regret that you did it. I will say on the right, we are sick to death of this, sick and tired of it. The virtuous, holier than thou attitudes towards us that's being presented out in public and in the media. When, again, we didn't do the summer of love, as they called it. The summer of love where thousands of people vandalized buildings, tried to burn them down. Oh, what about burning the churches down? Oh, what about putting a lady in jail because she protests at the abortion clinic and was praying? Yeah. What about all the people that were killed in those riots? What about the people who were hurt in those riots? What about those that went to Brett Kavanaugh's home and Supreme Court justices' homes? That's illegal to do that, by the way, but nothing happened to them. I mean, it is ridiculous. The parents that the federal government weaponized against that were protesting at school boards. All right, we're sick of it. I could go on and on and on. We're sick of it. And at some point, it's going to blow. So y'all are the ones that need to tamp things down. Y'all are the ones that need to calm down. We're already calm, as evidenced by the fact that we haven't had any riots or burning or vandalism or hurting people since this happened. Okay, so there's that. That's right. That's right. Luckily, the Secret Service director, Kimberly Cheadle, resigned. But then they put a new guy in, and I just find it funny that they replaced her with a man. How funny is that? That DEI didn't work out so well, did it? Anyway, she resigned. They replaced him with a man. At first, he was denying, involvement. He didn't have any answers, just like she didn't have answers. They were deferring, just like Karine Jean-Pierre defers all the time. I have to defer you. I have to defer. She says it all the time. She has no answers. They were doing the same thing in the hearings. However, the local police, like I said, have come out with receipts and called them on the carpet, and they had to admit it. So the new director of the Secret Service has admitted that it was a failure and has promised to beef up the security and all that. In fact, they did beef up security after this occurred already, like right after. And they had been denying. So Trump's team, I forgot to tell you this, Trump's team had been asking for beefed up security from Secret Service. There were many, many denials to that before this ever occurred. Likewise, Kennedy had also been asking for Secret Service protection, period, because he didn't have any. Also denied many, many times. Well, guess what? Since this happened, Kennedy got Secret Service protection, and they beefed up Trump's detail. So at least those are some good things that came out. But this whole thing could have been so much worse. It's just ridiculous how it all went down. Like Trump said, fight, fight, fight. And we, the people of law and order, by the way, will fight legally and lawfully to the extent that we can. That's what he asked for, and that's what we're on board for. We are not going to let the left take us into a total destruction of this country and totalitarianism. And if you want to argue the totalitarianism aspect, let's go. I'm ready. Because It is not President Trump who's being a totalitarian. It is Biden and the left, as evidenced by the fact that, as everybody keeps saying, you now have a candidate running for office for president in the next election that you didn't vote for, that the elites just put into place. Yeah. So you have no voice. That should wake you up enough right there. But let's talk about the banning of the big gulps in New York. I mean, that's a freedom issue. Might sound funny. It does sound kind of silly, but it might sound funny to you. But that was just one act where they overstepped boundaries and took away your personal freedom. You can't buy a big gulp anymore? Really? That was the priority? So stupid. Taking away the fossil fuels and not letting the market decide, and trying to push everybody into EV vehicles, which are catching fire everywhere, that firefighters won't even fight because they're so dangerous. I mean, come on, who's the totalitarian party now? It's pretty evident. That's all I got for you guys today, but I do want to ask you to share your comments with me in the comments below. Please put comments in, share your thoughts, ask questions, whatever. I want to see that because I want to interact, and I've been looking for it and haven't had a whole lot of comments yet. So let's get going with that. I also like to know what you're thinking, because maybe I'm off on this. Maybe you found something more recent or whatever. Please put it in the comments. I'm open-minded to definitely look into it and learn. Let me know if there's other things you want to know more about that had to do with this. I'll dig into it for you so you don't have to. Also, make sure you're sharing, because sharing is caring. That's a Josh thing. It cracks me up every time. Make sure you're sharing, commenting, following, liking, whatever you can do. I do want to send you to revolverbroadcasting.com too, because there's a lot of other fun shows that you might like, and serious shows, and all different kinds of content, shorts, whatever. But our team here has worked really hard to keep putting stuff out for you guys. And right now we're close to 1,000 subscribers. I want to make it to 1,000 subscribers in 1 month. So make sure you're subscribing to wherever you follow these, on podcasts, YouTube, Rumble, wherever you follow these, and also to revolverbroadcasting.com itself. We have a form on there. If you want to reach out to us privately, you can do that. Make sure you do that too. And we also have a really cool store. Josh, I don't know if you have any of the t-shirts ready, but I have one on myself. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, that's the Trump fight shirt.
The Trump fight shirt. Fight. And we have a Trumpomania shirt we just released. We have a weird shirt because, they want to call us weird now, which I think is so hilarious, because before, what were they calling us? Extremists?
Yeah.
Yeah, they like to call us extremists, but now we're just weird. That seems like a upgrade.
I'll take it.
I know why they do that, though. I figured it out. Because they can't for the life of them figure out why we haven't rioted and vandalized and hurt people over this assassination attempt. They can't figure it out, so it is weird to them. I think that's it. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, because we think with our brains instead of our emotions.
Yeah, and we fight fair. We are the people of law and order. Anyway, I digress. So anyways, go check out the merchandise on revolverbroadcasting.com. We have agenda specific stuff. We have Revolver Broadcasting. We have merch for the other shows. We have things like I got a really cool necklace for the agenda, and a coffee mug, and shirts, and all different kinds of materials and colors. So definitely go check it out. And with that, I'm going to bid you farewell. Until next time.